I said, we've got a lot of these projects that Hewlett have funded over time, and to try and get the reflections shared, the interest in the same direction. That's whole next function. Our mechanisms are, well, we're networking with people. We've got a site to support it. We're carrying out some specific research projects, and I'll say a little bit more about the areas we are putting those on in the first instance. And particularly relevant maybe to some people here who are offering a sort of fellowship approach, where we can support people to either spend time with us or with Carnegie Mellon University or somewhere else to come and sort of get embedded in the issues that are to do with researching in this open world and looking at open education resources, and go back with some resources to then carry out a particular study in their own context. So one of these projects is about design, about learning design, and there's an area within the CloudWorks site where you can see some workshops we've run. In fact, my colleague Grania Knoll has created a much larger carbon footprint than I have by going to Simon Fraser University today, I think, or maybe tomorrow, where she's taking part in a workshop. But you don't all have to travel there. You can see how the workshop's going. You see the activities taking place through the CloudWorks site. I gave Lynn the link earlier. I like giving her too many links, but I think that's the right one to take you to the Simon Fraser workshop. We've also had a visiting professor from Spain spend 4 months with us and sort of look at these, what we call designs, which is describing better what open education resources do to help people understand it, and taking a different slant, which is patterns, which is really describing better how people can learn with whatever resources. It's quite interesting how in our workshops it's been much easier to communicate the second than it would be to invest in the first, where we try and hone the design descriptions. Just to sort of communicate perhaps what patterns are about. Well, patterns is about, well, what's an Olympic stadium? And you describe it at a high enough level of terms, then you can end up with different solutions. The top being Sydney, the middle being Beijing, and the one at the bottom being the London one. Coming along nicely now. Last time I used these slides, all I have was a building site to show for London, but it's developing. So I'm going to try the poll, have another little pause for interaction. I know I've done a very quick description of patterns, but if you think about them as this sort of overall approach to how you learn, how many learning patterns do you think you've experienced that you'd need to be able to communicate to people before they could get hold of a different set of resources, open education resources, or even anything that's out there openly in the world, and put them together in a new way to sort of fit that pattern? Now, I realize, I've done the shortest talk before on this particular aspect before answering the question, but you've got vote buttons just, in my case, it's just on the word Illuminate Live in the heading A, B, C, D. So if you care to vote now and say whether you think there's a few patterns, say 1 to 4, a few more, past 10, see which zone you think the number of patterns. Have a go. Please press a button whether it makes whether the question makes entire sense to you or not.
I can publish the results in a moment on your screen, Patrick, okay?
Thanks, Lynn, that would be great. Thank you. And okay, that's some real data for me. I like data. So you can see that there's a fair few people think there's probably a lot of these. But you've got sort of relatively low numbers dominating, so 1 to 4, 5 to 10. And I've asked this question, this will be the third time I've asked this question in a forum which has fairly expert people involved. Actually, the answer most people give is if we get the right sort of descriptions, there's not very many that are needed to help people then take advantage of the resources that are out there by giving some additional guidance. So there's a level of sort of guidance that needs to be developed to help people work with open education resource sites that tends to be missing from the sites themselves. And working with Yanis has sort of encouraged me down this direction to see that we should put more effort into sharing of these patterns. And I think you can certainly answer at the high end as well, because this is a bit of the how long is a piece of string sort of question. You could say there's lots of patterns that need to be developed, but I think to me it's clear that there's value in developing a few and trying to get them communicated well, and that's what we're going to move on to. This shows some of the work that we've brought in from Yanis. By having Yanis with us, he's been able to bring in work that he's already done on collaborative patterns. This particular jigsaw pattern is a classic, but it's sort of well described, well established. So we sort of got this approach of sort of listening to other people and also testing out ideas by running face-to-face workshops, and we're moving on to sort of represent those as virtual workshops in the CloudWorks space. We're also getting data in. Jota, who's in the audience, is a colleague of mine, and she's been talking to all of these organizations, asking people who are in the open world, and not necessarily in the open education resource world. There's a sort of informal open education resource world as well as a more formal one. What are the issues they're finding and the attitudes that come out? I've just noticed Terry's mentioned Christopher Alexander, and yeah, this is very much work that's inspired by Christopher Alexander's looking at the architecture world. And the key sort of message from that is that he hasn't described everything that's possible, but he describes a few good things that you can achieve in his book. Another one of the sub-projects is looking at participatory learning, sort of how are people now learning in this open world. Sort of, I suppose there's still a producer element, a teacher element, and we're now looking at sort of what's happening more directly with communication with learners. Because most of our 8 million visitors to OpenLearn are learners rather than teachers. And we've got some research going on around that, working with particular other sites, looking at the model fair using CC Mixter, Smart History, and we've got a project here called iSpot, which is gathering real data of nature observations. A fascinating site, I must say, iSpot. And that sort of is then people can do authentic work that feeds into their learning. It had a bit of a coup just last week when a new moth was discovered by a 6-year-old girl, and she posted the picture onto iSpot, and an expert then came in and confirmed that this was a new moth to the UK, a rare visitor from elsewhere in Europe. Around the research we've been doing there, so another colleague, Elle Peder, who's working on the project, she's done a very broad study of thousands of sites that are aiming to do social networking, then sort of pinned it down by following particular patterns and tracks of people working on those sites. And people can undervalue content. Content isn't attractive. People are gathering to sites because they've got content that interests them. And in particular, the characteristics she's identified, sort of content that helps people come to a site. It's got a high quality feel to it. It's fresh, it's fast, it's micro, and it's relevant to people.